You know that quiet moment when your cat finally decides to sit next to you. No noise, no excitement, no sudden movement. Just presence. Suddenly your breathing slows down. Your mind feels lighter. The tension you did not even notice carrying all day begins to fade. If you have ever felt that shift, then you already know something most people never stop to question. Being around a cat can change the way you feel inside your own mind. But here is the strange part. Not everyone experiences this. Some people see cats as distant, unpredictable, even indifferent. They prefer animals that greet them with loud excitement and constant interaction. Yet for others, cats feel different. Being around them creates a sense of calm that is difficult to explain. It feels natural, almost necessary. So the real question is not simply why people love cats. The real question is why certain people feel deeply understood by them. Psychology suggests that this connection may have less to do with animals and more to do with how your brain processes the world around you. The way you handle noise. The way you react to emotional pressure. The way your nervous system searches for safety after a long day of constant stimulation. Think about your own experience for a moment. When life becomes overwhelming, do you feel better in loud environments full of activity? Or do you feel relief when things become quiet and predictable? Your answer to that question may explain far more than your preference for cats. It may reveal something fundamental about how your mind works. And once you understand that, the bond between certain people and cats suddenly starts to make a lot more sense. Because loving cats might not just be a preference. It might be a reflection of the kind of mind you have. There is a pattern psychologists have noticed when studying people who feel naturally drawn to cats. It is not about personality in the simple sense. It is about how different nervous systems react to the world. Some people regulate their emotions through stimulation. Activity helps them feel balanced. Conversation energizes them. Being surrounded by movement and interaction keeps their mind engaged and stable. Other people function differently. Their nervous systems are far more sensitive to external input. Loud environments drain their energy. Constant conversation becomes exhausting. Too many emotional demands from the outside world create tension that builds quietly over time. These individuals do not need more stimulation. They need space to process. For them, calm is not a luxury. It is regulation. Now think about how a cat behaves. A cat does not rush toward you demanding attention the moment you walk through the door. It does not fill every moment with noise or activity. Instead, it exists beside you without pressure. Sometimes close, sometimes distant, always allowing space. For a nervous system that is constantly filtering information, this kind of presence feels incredibly safe. And that is where something interesting begins to happen. When your brain detects an environment where it no longer needs to stay alert, your body begins to shift out of a state of vigilance. Your breathing becomes slower. Your muscles relax. Your thoughts lose their urgency. That quiet moment when your cat curls up beside you is not just comforting. It is your nervous system recognizing that, for once, nothing is demanding anything from you. And for people whose minds are constantly processing the world around them, that kind of quiet presence can feel almost therapeutic. But there is another layer to this connection that most people completely overlook. It has to do with something surprisingly subtle, the way certain people naturally read emotional signals that others never even notice. There is something unusual about the way cats communicate. They rarely rely on loud signals or obvious gestures. Most of what they express happens through small movements that are easy to miss if you are not paying attention. A slight flick of the tail, a slow blink, a subtle shift in posture, the distance they choose to keep from you. To someone who expects direct and constant interaction, these signals seem insignificant. Cats may appear distant or difficult to understand. But for certain people, Those tiny changes are incredibly clear. This is where psychology becomes interesting. Some individuals have a naturally higher sensitivity to subtle cues in their environment. Their brains constantly scan for patterns in tone of voice, facial expressions, body language, and emotional atmosphere. They notice things others overlook without even trying. You may have experienced this yourself. Walking into a room and instantly sensing tension even when nobody says a word. Noticing when someone's mood shifts slightly during a conversation. Feeling when a space becomes emotionally heavy before anyone acknowledges it. This kind of awareness is often linked to high emotional perception. The brain becomes skilled at detecting microsignals that reveal what is happening beneath the surface. Now imagine interacting with an animal whose entire communication system depends on subtle signals. For someone with high perceptual sensitivity, a cat does not feel mysterious. It feels readable, almost intuitive. You notice when your cat wants space. You sense when it feels comfortable approaching you. You recognize the difference between curiosity, irritation, and affection. Over time, this creates something that feels surprisingly personal. It begins to feel less like managing a pet and more like understanding a quiet language that exists between two nervous systems sharing the same space. And that experience can be deeply rewarding for people who naturally live in a world of subtle emotional signals. But this connection reveals another psychological trait that often appears in people who feel drawn to cats. It has to do with something many people struggle with in human relationships. Boundaries. One of the most interesting psychological traits shared by many people who love cats has nothing to do with animals. It has to do with how they experience closeness. In many human relationships, connection often comes with expectations. There is an unspoken pressure to respond quickly, to match emotional energy, to explain feelings, to stay engaged even when the mind feels tired. For some people, this constant negotiation becomes exhausting. They enjoy connection, but they do not always enjoy the pressure that comes with it. Now think about how a cat behaves. A cat does not assume constant access to your attention. It approaches when it wants connection and leaves when it wants space. It does not interpret distance as rejection or silence as a problem that needs to be fixed. This creates a very different dynamic. With a cat, closeness exists without obligation. The relationship allows for both presence and independence at the same time. For people who value emotional boundaries, this feels incredibly natural. It removes a hidden tension that often exists in human interaction. The tension of needing to perform emotionally even when your mind needs quiet. Many cat lovers are not avoiding connection. They are avoiding pressure. They appreciate relationships where space is respected and attention is given freely rather than demanded. A cat does exactly that. It offers affection when it chooses, and when it withdraws, it does so without guilt or explanation. That rhythm creates a sense of mutual respect. And something surprising happens when people experience connection in this way. They begin to realize that closeness does not always require constant interaction. Sometimes the most comfortable form of companionship is simply sharing the same space without needing to fill every moment with words. For certain personalities, that kind of quiet companionship feels more genuine than forced interaction. But there is another reason cats seem to fit so naturally into the lives of people who think deeply about the world around them. It has something to do with how the mind works when it finally finds silence. There is a reason so many writers, artists, thinkers, and reflective people throughout history have kept cats close to them. It is not simply companionship. It has a lot to do with how certain minds function best. Deep thinking requires something that is becoming rare in modern life: uninterrupted mental space. To reflect, imagine, solve problems, or create something meaningful, the brain needs periods of quiet where attention is not constantly pulled in different directions. When the environment is full of noise, demands, and sudden interruptions, the mind struggles to stay in that deeper state of focus. Some people are especially sensitive to this. Their thoughts move quickly and deeply. They notice patterns, analyze situations, replay conversations, and reflect on ideas longer than most. This type of mind benefits enormously from calm environments where focus can stretch without being broken. Now look again at the way cats behave. They coexist with your attention instead of competing for it. The cat may sit beside you while you read, write, think, or simply stare out a window. It shares the space without demanding constant engagement. That quiet presence protects something incredibly valuable: your ability to stay inside your own thoughts. For people whose minds are naturally reflective, this matters more than they might realize. The presence of a cat creates an atmosphere where the brain can remain in a state of gentle awareness rather than constant reaction. Your attention does not need to jump from one demand to another. It can stay steady. And when attention stabilizes, something interesting happens inside the brain. Thoughts become clearer. Ideas form more easily. The nervous system settles into a rhythm that supports concentration rather than breaking it. This is why many people describe their cats as calming even when nothing obvious is happening. The calm does not come from activity. It comes from the absence of interruption. But there is another layer to this experience that goes beyond personality or thinking style. Something biological is happening inside your body when a cat is near you, and most people never realize it. Before your mind even labels a feeling as calm, safe, or relaxed, something else happens first. Your nervous system reacts. Most people assume comfort is a conscious decision. They believe they relax because they think something is pleasant. In reality, the process usually works the other way around. Your body recognizes safety first, and only then does your mind catch up. This is where the presence of a cat becomes surprisingly powerful. Cats produce a steady, rhythmic vibration when they purr. That sound is not just pleasant to hear. It exists within a frequency range that the human nervous system responds to instinctively. These low rhythmic frequencies signal something important to the brain. There is no immediate threat. When the brain receives that signal, it begins shifting out of alert mode. Breathing slows. Muscles loosen. Stress hormones start to decrease. The body gradually moves from vigilance into regulation. You may have experienced this without realizing what was happening. Your cat jumps onto your lap, begins purring, and after a few minutes your thoughts feel less urgent. The tension you carried through the day begins to dissolve quietly. Nothing dramatic happened, yet your body feels different. That shift is not just emotional. It is physiological. The brain interprets rhythmic, predictable sensations as signs of environmental stability. In other words, your nervous system understands the steady vibration of a purr as a signal that the environment is calm and predictable. For people whose minds spend much of the day managing stress, processing information, and anticipating problems, this signal is incredibly valuable. It allows the body to do something it rarely gets the chance to do: downshift. Once your nervous system learns that a certain presence consistently brings it back into balance, your brain starts forming a deeper attachment to that presence. The feeling of comfort becomes associated with the animal itself. Over time, that connection can become so strong that simply seeing your cat resting nearby can trigger the same calming response. But the most surprising part of this entire connection has very little to do with cats at all. It has everything to do with the kind of mind that feels at home in quiet environments. At this point, it becomes clear that this connection is not really about preference. It is about compatibility between your nervous system and the environment that surrounds you. Some minds thrive in constant stimulation. Fast conversations, loud spaces, and continuous activity feel energizing to them. Their brains regulate through engagement. Other minds operate very differently. They absorb far more information from their surroundings. Sounds, emotional signals, subtle changes in mood, social expectations. Their awareness runs deeper and wider at the same time. This heightened awareness can be a strength, but it also means the brain works harder to process everything happening around it. When stimulation becomes constant, the nervous system rarely gets the chance to slow down. For these individuals, calm environments are not just pleasant. They are necessary. This is where the presence of a cat fits perfectly. The cat does not overload the senses. It moves slowly, rests frequently, and interacts in ways that allow space between moments of connection. The rhythm is quiet, predictable, and balanced. That rhythm matches the needs of minds that spend much of their time observing, reflecting, and processing. It allows awareness to exist without overload. Many people who feel drawn to cats share certain psychological tendencies. They often think deeply about situations. They reflect on conversations long after they happen. They analyze patterns in human behavior. They notice details others miss. This does not mean they prefer isolation or dislike people. It simply means their minds work best in environments where silence and presence can exist together. Once you see this pattern, the bond between certain people and cats starts to feel less mysterious. Your cat is not simply a companion. It represents a kind of emotional environment your mind recognizes as safe. And when your brain finds something that consistently creates that sense of safety, attachment becomes almost inevitable. Which leads to a final idea that many cat lovers recognize instantly once they hear it. The reason you love your cat so much might not be because your cat needs you. It might be because your mind feels understood in a way that is surprisingly rare. When people talk about love or companionship, they usually imagine something loud and obvious. Constant interaction. Emotional intensity. Words, reactions, reassurance. Many relationships are built around this kind of energy. But there is another form of connection that receives far less attention. Quiet connection. The kind where two beings share the same space without pressure. No expectation to perform, explain, entertain, or constantly respond. Just presence. This is the kind of connection cats naturally create. A cat does not require you to be cheerful when you feel tired. It does not expect you to explain your mood or match its emotional energy. It simply exists beside you, accepting whatever state you are in. For certain minds, that experience is incredibly rare. Many people move through their day adjusting themselves to the expectations of others. They monitor how they speak, how they react, how quickly they respond. They read emotional signals and adapt constantly to maintain harmony in their relationships. Over time, this creates a quiet fatigue. The mind becomes used to managing emotional environments. Even moments of connection can feel like something that requires effort. Then a cat enters the room and does something completely different. It sits nearby, perhaps watching the same window or settling into a comfortable position beside you. Nothing needs to be said. Nothing needs to be proven. You are simply sharing a moment of existence without negotiation. That kind of companionship allows the nervous system to rest in a way most social environments do not allow. For people whose minds are naturally observant, thoughtful, and sensitive to emotional signals, this kind of quiet relationship can feel almost profound. It reminds the brain that connection does not always require effort. Sometimes it only requires presence. And when someone experiences that kind of companionship regularly, something subtle begins to change in the way they understand relationships. They start to realize that closeness does not always have to be loud to be real. Sometimes the most meaningful kind of connection is the one that asks nothing from you at all. Finally, this reveals something important about the kind of mind that feels drawn to cats in the first place. At first glance, loving cats may seem like a simple preference. Some people like dogs, others like cats, and that is where the conversation usually ends. But when you look closer, the connection often reveals something deeper about how certain minds experience the world. If you feel naturally drawn to cats, there is a good chance your mind values subtlety over intensity. You may notice details others overlook. You may think carefully before speaking. You may prefer depth in conversation rather than constant noise. Your attention probably moves inward just as often as it moves outward. That does not mean you are distant or disconnected. It simply means your mind processes the world with a different rhythm. You might enjoy moments of silence where your thoughts can settle. You may appreciate environments where nothing demands immediate reaction. When conversations become overwhelming or spaces grow too chaotic, your instinct may be to step back and find somewhere quieter to recalibrate. For people with this kind of awareness, cats feel familiar. Their behavior mirrors that same rhythm of presence and distance. They approach when the moment feels right and retreat when they need space. There is no pressure to fill the silence. No expectation to maintain constant interaction. In many ways, the relationship reflects the inner structure of your own mind. It allows you to experience companionship without abandoning the calm environments where your thoughts function best. And that realization changes the way many people see their relationship with their cats. What once felt like a simple emotional attachment begins to look more like a natural alignment between two nervous systems that operate in a similar way. Your cat is not simply sharing your home. It is sharing the kind of space where your mind feels most comfortable existing. Once you understand all of this, something starts to become clear. The connection many people feel with their cats is not built on dependency. It is built on compatibility. Cats do not demand constant reassurance. They do not expect you to perform emotionally every moment of the day. They allow you to exist as you are, whether you are energetic, quiet, reflective, or completely lost in your own thoughts. For minds that spend much of their time adapting to the expectations of the outside world, this kind of companionship can feel incredibly grounding. It creates a rare emotional environment where nothing needs to be proven. You do not need to explain your silence. You do not need to justify your mood. You do not need to entertain anyone. You can simply exist. That is why so many people describe their relationship with their cats as calming in a way that is difficult to explain. The calm does not come from excitement or interaction. It comes from the absence of pressure. And when the nervous system repeatedly experiences that kind of environment, it begins to associate that presence with safety. Over time, the attachment grows naturally. Not because the cat depends on you, but because your mind recognizes that being near this quiet creature allows you to return to a version of yourself that feels balanced, grounded, and at ease. In a world that often rewards noise, urgency, and constant stimulation, cats offer something different. They offer permission to slow down. And sometimes, that is exactly what a thoughtful mind needs. At the end of all this, one quiet truth remains. Your love for cats might not simply be about the animal itself. It may be about the kind of environment your mind naturally seeks. Some people feel most alive in movement, noise, and constant interaction. Their energy grows through stimulation. Their minds feel sharp when the world around them moves quickly. But other minds work differently. They search for calm spaces where thoughts can unfold without interruption. They appreciate moments where nothing demands immediate reaction. Their awareness is often deeper, more reflective, sometimes even overwhelming when the outside world becomes too loud. For these minds, silence is not emptiness. Silence is clarity. And that is exactly what cats bring into a space. They exist without forcing interaction. They sit beside you without asking for explanations. They offer presence without turning every moment into a performance. In that quiet companionship, something rare happens. Your mind stops defending itself against constant stimulation. Your nervous system settles into a rhythm that feels natural rather than forced. For a moment, you are not reacting to the world. You are simply existing within it. That is why the bond between certain people and cats can feel so deeply personal. It is not only affection. It is recognition. Recognition of a rhythm that matches your own. So the next time your cat chooses to sit beside you, watch quietly for a moment. Notice how the room feels calmer. Notice how your thoughts slow down. Notice how the tension in your body begins to dissolve. In that simple moment, something meaningful is happening. Not just between you and your cat, but inside your own mind. And if this reflection resonated with you, if it helped you understand your connection with cats in a new way, consider subscribing to explore more insights about the psychology behind everyday behaviors and the hidden patterns that shape the way we think, feel, and connect with the world around us.